So in the last 48 hours, the baseball world has been going absolutely nuts over Juan Soto. Now, the 23-year-old superstar just rejected a 15-year, $440 million contract. That is a $30 million AAV from the Washington Nationals. And now that has led to the report that the Nationals will look to trade him if they do not come to an extension agreement. Now, even though this is in division, and even though there's probably going to be 20 teams that are going to want Soto on the trade market, I'm going to turn to the Rhino GM on this one, and he is going to give us 3 possible trade packages for Juan Soto that the Mets can make.
Are you ready, kids?
Aye, aye, Captain.
On 3-2, Vader. Swings and misses, strike 3. He struck him out. 5 Met pitchers combined for the second no-hitter in New York Mets history.
So I always get asked, listen, Carson, you're the most sunshine of the two, and you're always the star of the videos. So I guess I'm going to turn it over to Andrew so he gets to finally get his spotlight.
You're going to need a big spotlight to fit my fat in there. We got 3 trade packages. We got what the Nationals' dream scenario, the Godfather offer. If they got their way 100%, that's what they want. Then we have number 2. It's going to be a fair offer. I think if it comes down to it, what the final offer is going to be. And then the third offer, which is going to be if the Mets get their way and flex their financial flexibility, meaning if that's what they want, maybe less draft capital, but taking on maybe the worst contract. Baseball, we'll get to that.
So just as a warning, we're saying that these are not going to actually happen. These are just potential trade packages that the Mets can put together to land Juan Soto, one of the best players this game has ever seen for a long time. Now, I do want to start with the Godfather offer because I do want to see how unbalanced this possibly could be, how much the Nats could possibly take advantage being in division and how much they possibly could pull our leg.
So the Godfather off, it is just Juan Soto. So no attaching of bad contract. This is Juan Soto to the New York Mets alone. And obviously you've got to take into account other trades that were made. Obviously, the biggest example is the Washington Nationals and Dodgers last year. For Turner and Scherzer, they gave up 1, 2, 7, and a couple of lower top 30 prospects the Dodgers gave. And you also have to keep that in mind. Scherzer was for 2 months, and Trey was for 1 year and 2 months. Juan Soto has 2 years and 2 months. So you're getting him before you get a nice little extension. Obviously, if you want to get out, but you're getting him with 2.5 years of service time. The Washington Nationals acquire number 1 prospect overall in the Mets system, Francisco Alvarez, number 2 prospect overall, Brett Baty, number 3 overall prospect, Ronnie Mauricio, number 5 overall prospect, Mark Vientos, starting pitchers, David Peterson, and Tylor Megill. Dodgers got 1 and 2 for Scherzer and Turner. Juan Soto is better than both. So you're going to have to give up for Juan Soto. Why is that happening? You're not taking on any bad contracts. So you're getting a pure talent, no extra bullshit contracts.
This is definitely a Godfather ransom right here. And, you see the top of this farm system, you're taking the top heavy right out of it. This would easily bring the Nationals from a bottom tier farm system to a very high ranked farm system, possibly number 1 or number 2. And that's something you definitely have to keep in mind if you're taking Juan Soto, just purely him and nothing attached to him. Now, the only thing that I do question with this is obviously David Peterson and Tylor Megill. Would you say that major league ready arms have a lot of value in this type of Soto trade with a team that is going to be rebuilding? And you have David Peterson and Tylor Megill who are in the middle of the prime of their career.
I mean, yeah, value for pitching is obviously high. They don't have any kind of pitching coming besides Cade, who's in AAA. They have some low A guys. They are desperate need for some extra pitching. And like you said, you can never have enough pitching. Look at the Mets. Mets could never have enough pitching, and especially when you're rebuilding.
David Peterson and Tylor Megill are obviously not even into their 30s yet. They're both in their mid-20s. And you kind of wonder if they do want major league ready type of players, or if they're looking just for prospects just to load that farm system up to bring it from bottom to top.
And if they are looking more long-term, you could replace David Peterson with a Matt Allen. You look what he's been in the big leagues. He's probably a middle of the line starter. You still don't know what Matt Allen is, even though he never seems to pitch and play minor league baseball.
And this is probably my last question with this. And I'm going to tell you right now, you add Baty into this, right? Baty's obviously going to go into this King's ransom. What do you think that the path in third base is going to look like without Baty there? Maybe trading for one or signing one in free agency when Eduardo Escobar is gone. Would you say that the path in third base would definitely changed.
In this trade, Vientos is going too, so you're losing both. If that were the case, I do think, I know you've talked about it as an idea, maybe Manny Machado. If he were to opt out, I think the Mets, if they were to trade Beatty, I do think they would go external. But again, how much more money are we putting into this team? That's also, we don't know what Steve Cohen's plan is. And maybe not this year, but in upcoming drafts, maybe they do that. Maybe they go out and try to add a veteran all-star caliber third baseman. Third base has been the dumpster fire that it's been for the Mets since right left. But I do think Beatty ends up in this trade, which pains me to say. I think he's probably the one top chip that's going to get moved if the Mets can fight away. Not trading Alvarez because they have Keybear, but it would just be, again, the graveyard of Eduardo Escobar, and then who's next?
Yeah, definitely. And we don't know what they're going to draft or what we know what they're going to move for. But what we're looking at right now is Brett Beatty. He's the main guy that's going to be their third baseman of the future. That's the path that they're taking right now. It definitely could shift the plan that's going on with the franchises with the positions around Soto and Lindor and Alonso and all these guys that we're looking to keep long term. All right, so now I want to see the fair deal, the most balanced of them all.
Obviously, we'll start with the Mets side. They're going to get Juan Soto, and they will take on the Patrick Corbin. The last 2 years of Patrick Corbin, $59 million over the next 2 years, 24 next year, and 35 in 2025. The Nationals would receive Brett Beatty, Ronnie Mauricio, Alex Ramirez, Matt Allen, Peterson, Miguel. So you have to kind of balance out the prospect capital of, oh, you're losing the piece of Alvarez, but you have to take on the contract. Hurt me to trade Alex Ramirez because obviously losing PCA last year. Now you're losing A-Ram in this trade. And again, now Allen is involved. Again, pitching, and they get 3 bats, 3 pitchers. They've already said, saw a report, it's going to be 4 prospects plus taking on the Corbin contract to get a deal done. That for me is the fairest deal the Mets are going to give. If Beatty's going to have to be sacrificed. Mauricio, again, everyone has his bags packed. They do have Brady House in their system at shortstop. Carter Kieboom has sucked, so we're talking about more just the national position player-wise. 2 future outfielders, 2 future infielders, and then 3 future pitchers. The price you're going to pay for a generational superstar.
There is another horrible contract, and I'm sure you're going to get to that in the third trade. What about Juan Soto, Patrick Corbin, and Steven Strasburg all together in a package? Does that possibly keep you from giving up Beatty and Alvarez? DeGrom will probably be out the door if they do this. Would you say that that keeps them from getting rid of Alvarez and Beatty and getting Juan Soto in return?
I do think Strasburg can help save a lot of prospect capital because that might be the worst contract overall in baseball. You're going to pay a guy $35 million a year the next 4 years to probably never pitch again, and $80 million for 20 the next 3 years. If you're bundling them all, you could probably get them for Dom Smith and JD Davis at that point. I think everybody that's interested will take on the Corbin contract. If the Mets really want to get a deal done here, you might have to take on that Strasburg contract, and that could also bring down the prospect capital you would have to give up, because that, for a guy who's probably never going to pitch again, I do think Strasburg could be a piece that maybe this gets the deal done in the Mets' favor. If everybody's taking Corbin, nobody wants to take on that Strasburg contract. I would kind of prefer to take on the Strasburg contract with Soto to bring that prospect capital done and maybe get the deal in our favor, be the favorites to get him.
And then you also look at Patrick Corbin. If you were to take on Patrick Corbin, it's a lefty. Mets have been shortage of lefties. You can probably move him to the pen. It can definitely help in the postseason whenever. Fine taking on Corbin. I don't think he's the pitcher he used to be, but he's still been decent somewhat. And, if you have that coming out of the bullpen, I don't really think there's really much to complain about, especially with the limited options that the Mets have had from the Southpaw region.
If the Mets were to use him, I think it could be sit him on the bench. Maybe a long man, but also you've got Trevor Williams and you have better guys for that role. But if you're bringing him in, you're just kind of maybe sitting him at home for 2 years to collect your benefits and just get the hell off the squad.
So now let's get to the biggest benefit for the Mets, a dream scenario for the Big Apple.
And this is where the Mets can flex their financial flexibility and take on the worst contract overall in Major League Baseball. The problem is he does have a full no trade clause, so he could say, you know what? No, I'm not leaving. Which is the problem with this trade. The Mets get Soto and 4 years of $35 million a year with $80 million deferred the next 3 seasons in exchange for Mark Vientos, Ronnie Mauricio, Matt Allen, Dominic Hamill, JD Davis, Dom Smith, and Khalil Lee. A lot of assets, a lot of trash in that deal, but the benefit is taking on that monstrosity of a deal. You can give up lesser prospect. No Beatty, no Alvarez. And I think that's the only way the Mets are to make this trade is if they take on that Strasburg contract, because nobody else is going to do it. Problem is, again, he's probably never going to play baseball again. That's $35 million on your payroll next 4 seasons. The Mets don't have a lot of contracts locked up long term after next season. Why do the Nationals do it? Again, they are most likely getting sold to a new ownership who would like a complete retool, can completely put their own stamp on this team, but it would give the new ownership for the Nationals full reign to say, you know what, we're not high against the payroll. We have a low payroll. Now we can put our money in and sign the guys we want because now we have the financial flexibility to make moves that we want to make. Again, this is a dream scenario for the Mets, which they can use their financial flexibility of having Steve Cohen to take on the worst contract in baseball to save prospect capital.
The first thought with a lot of Mets fans is with Strasburg is Robinson Cano. Oh, this is a Robinson Cano contract. We want nothing to do with it. Need to wipe our hands clean of all these awful contracts. But what my main concern with this one is you take on Steven Strasburg. What does that do for DeGrom going to free agency? For Brandon Nimmo going to free agency? Guys like Edwin Diaz going to free agency? All the guys that are going to be free agents, how much does that affect those guys that you want to bring back and bring back long-term that are already on your team?
Obviously, the number is going to be terrible, and I can completely understand fans saying $35 million for 4 years. That's ridiculous. But also, one, you're getting Juan Soto. It really doesn't do anything to those guys to an extent. The Mets, like we said, I believe in 2026, only have 6 guys under contract in that year. $50 million out of 264. So the Mets still have long-term flexibility, even with this monstrosity on the books. It looks bad now, and you're probably going to have to lose 10 spots in your draft pick next year, which is most likely the case. The Mets were going to go anyway. So yes, it's scary to think, $35 million. But if you actually look for the future of this payroll, the Mets are still very, very flexible because they haven't locked up DeGrom. They haven't locked up Alonso, Nimmo, McNeil. Again, even with a bad contract, they still have the room if they want to do it.
You just look at it short term, and it definitely does have a lot of worries, especially with the amount of free agents that we do have out there. But all I can say is that you don't really give up much prospect capital in this deal. There's also some wins, too, for the Nationals getting rid of that contract, obviously, with possible new ownership coming in. Obviously, it's still currently a pipe dream that Juan Soto will be a Met. We don't know what is going to happen. We don't know if they want to trade in division, but there's definitely a lot of possibilities that could get this guy in Queen. I would love to win the World Series this year. He can definitely transform this team from a playoff contender to a World Series favorite, let alone a World Series contender. I mean, that is how much of a game changer Juan Soto is. He's only 23 years old also, which makes it even more scary of how dominant this guy is going to be for years and years to come.
I just can't imagine being in New York City. Donovan Mitchell and Juan Soto are going to be traded to New York. 2 superstars in their prime, sub 25, in New York, saving franchises and turning one into a dynasty. What a time to be a New York sports fan.
New York is taking over, man.
Dude, we
hear, folks. We hear.
We hear.